Hello, and welcome. Tonight, we're going to Belgium, to Antwerp, a city of quiet cobblestones and cathedral spires, where the rain on the river Scheldt seems to wash the color from the sky. Imagine standing in a narrow street, where the world's most precious stones have passed from hand to hand for 500 years. The air here doesn't smell of money. It smells of trust, of history. You hear the soft click of a briefcase latch, the low murmur of a deal sealed in Yiddish, and maybe, if you listen very closely, the faint, patient sound of a plan taking shape, the sound of a key being copied from memory. Somewhere deep in the heart of Italy, somewhere in a small, rented office overlooking this glittering world, a man named Leonardo Notarbartolo is adjusting his tie. He's not a diamond dealer, not in his soul. He's a thief. But the tools he's using tonight aren't crowbars or drills. They are patience, charm, and a tenant's ID card. He's about to knock on the door of a vault so secure, its makers called it invincible. And he's going to do it so quietly, no one will even know he was there until Monday morning. You probably wouldn't last 5 minutes on his crew, not because of the violence, but because of the incredible, maddening calm you would need to find within yourself. So before we begin, take a moment to settle in. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from tonight. I read them all. Dim your screen, quiet your room, and let your body grow heavy. It's time to unlock this story, tumbler by tumbler, together. The office smells of stale coffee and rented furniture. It's small, anonymous, one of dozens packed into the Antwerp World Diamond Centre. A cheap desk fan pushes the damp air around, making a calendar on the wall flutter like a trapped bird. Leonardo Notarbartolo stands by the window. One hand rests on the cool glass. The other holds a small, flawed diamond he keeps in his pocket. He doesn't look at it. He feels it. A reminder that nothing is perfect. Antwerp, below him, is a slow-moving river of grey stone and quiet reverence. The city, the undisputed king of the diamond trade, hums with a strange kind of stillness. It is a world built on handshakes and family names, where a man's word is his bond and a vault's security is his religion. But Notarbartolo knows better. It's not religion, it's complacency. He is nearly 50 years old, but tonight, under the weight of a plan so beautiful it feels like a theorem, he feels ageless. The air in the office holds a kind of pressure, like a secret that has been kept for too long. Not a secret that will explode, but one that will simply unlock with the quiet, satisfying click of a well-made watch. Behind him, the door opens without a sound. His associate, a man we'll call Elio, leans in. He is a genius with wires, a man who sees electricity not as power, but as a conversation he can interrupt. He is tired in a way that settles deep in the bones. "They are ready," he says, his voice barely a whisper. Notarbartolo turns. The flawed diamond disappears back into his pocket. In a quiet apartment, miles away, 3 other men wait. They are not from Antwerp. They are from Turin. They have rougher hands and eyes that have learned not to reflect light. They wear simple, dark clothes and expressions carefully balanced between professional respect and deep skepticism. They are not here for small talk. They are here to see if this charming, well-dressed man they call the artist is for real. This was Leonardo Notarbartolo, the architect of a plan born from a simple observation. Every system has a rhythm, and if you can learn the rhythm, you can become part of it. He ran his life not like a thief, but like a meticulous choreographer who hated missteps and clumsy entrances. He was about to apply that same precision to the world's most secure vault, the silence he has cultivated for 3 years, posing as a minor Italian jewel merchant, wraps around him like a well-tailored coat. The conversation that night is brief, whispered. They discuss the heat signature of the vault's sensors, the patrol schedule of the late-night guards, the decibel level of a drill bit on reinforced concrete, a missing piece of equipment from a supplier in Brussels who got spooked. Note listens more than he speaks. His fingers tap the table. A slow, steady rhythm, like a heartbeat. His own, we can persuade the supplier, one of the Turin men says. His voice, a low gravel. Or his family. Notarbartolo looks up, finally. Neither, he says, his voice calm, level. We don't create problems. We solve the one in front of us. The tool can be remade. There's a pause. Not a challenge, just the sound of professionals recalculating the odds around a new variable. This man doesn't speak like a thug, but his stillness is louder than any threat they've ever heard. It's deliberate, like counting out diamonds in a room full of people you don't quite trust. After the meeting, Notarbartolo walks through the sleeping city. He passes the Grand Central Station, a cathedral of steel and glass. Above it, the stars are brilliant. He doesn't go home. He walks to a small, all-night cafe where the old men play cards and the coffee is strong enough to keep secrets. He does this every night. He returns to a place where the air has no agenda, where the city becomes a map of ordinary lives, where he can feel the weight of his plan without anyone seeing his shoulders tense. Tonight, though, he thinks he sees someone in a car across the street, watching him through the rain-streaked glass. Or maybe it's just a trick of the light. It doesn't matter. He knows he's being watched. By the police, by rival crews, by the universe itself. When you plan something this big, you become the center of a gravity well. He sits on a worn stool, the city spread before him like a promise. The fan in the cafe is still turning below. Shadows crawl across the walls. In the distance, a ship's horn from the port sounds. A delivery arriving, or a departure well made. Notarbartolo's phone buzzes. A message from a number with no name. The mender wants to see you. He deletes it without replying. The meeting is set for a place that doesn't officially exist. A private room above a bookbinder's shop in the old Jewish quarter. The air smells of leather, glue, and centuries of dust. To get there, you don't ask for directions. You follow a man who knows which door to knock on Nechons y Tres. Policial Militar. Notarbartolo Hivis. The room is quiet, lined with old books that have lost their titles. At a heavy wooden table sits a man known only as the mender. He is old, impeccably dressed, with the soft hands of a man who has never had to lift anything heavier than a diamond. Loop, he is one of the district's patriarchs, a man whose family has traded here for generations, and he is the silent partner in this impossible heist. The men from Turin are already there, and there's a new face now, a specialist, an older man from Vienna who knows how to work with locks and keys without making a sound. The kind of man who never raises his voice because his hands do all the talking. They call him the King of Keys. The mender listens. The words swirl. Holiday weekend, for days, a tennis tournament in town to cover any strange activity. He files them away like settings on a camera. Then, casually, the King of Keys mentions a problem. The key for the vault. Your pictures are excellent, Leonardo, but they don't show the depth of the cuts. I can make a key that looks perfect. but it may not feel perfect to the lock. The mender interrupts. Repeat that. The old man blinks. I said, the key may not work. A millimeter of difference, and the tumblers will not fall. Is there a solution? The mender asks, his voice soft, but with an edge of cold steel. The king of keys smiles, too slowly. And Notarbartolo knows this isn't just a briefing. This is the final test. He stands. No anger, no outburst, just a profound stillness. The room seems to lean into his silence. There is no problem, Notarbartolo says. The key will work, because he will make 3, each one a fraction of a millimeter different. We will try them all. Patience is the solution. He looks at the king of keys, isn't it? The keymaker nods, a slow dip of his head. Yes, patience. On the way out, a shadow detaches from a corner. One of his lookouts. Ready? The man asks. Notarbartolo nods. They always forget about patience. The next night, the security guard on the vault floor mysteriously calls in sick. No alarms. Just a replacement who is younger, less observant, and more interested in his radio than the monitors. And Notarbartolo goes back to his cafe. The watcher in the car isn't there tonight, but a small, hand-carved wooden bird remains on his stool. Tucked into a folded napkin, a message from the mender, a sign of approval. The morning fog hangs over Antwerp like a lazy ghost, clinging to the gabled roofs and the grand facades of the guild houses. The city breathes slow in the early light, but some corners of Antwerp never really sleep in an abandoned warehouse on the industrial outskirts. Something quietly extraordinary is taking shape. A group of men stand in a full-scale replica of the Antwerp World Diamond Centre's vault, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of work lamps. The air is thick with the smell of sawdust and solder. They are practicing. One of them, a young man they call Speedy, keeps glancing at the door, his hands twisting a piece of wire in his lap. He already knows the story probably doesn't end. With a quiet retirement on the Italian coast, the signal comes. A single buzz on a cheap burner phone. 2 men, focused and intense, emerge from the deeper darkness. One is Elio, the genius, who is calibrating a homemade electromagnetic shield. The other is a mountain of a man named Ferdinando, the monster, who is testing the tensile strength of a custom-built lock puller. They don't speak to Speedy, they don't need to. He understands. This is it. The final weeks of rehearsal. This is the point of no return. A few minutes later, the practice is over. The lamps are extinguished, and the men leave the warehouse, their boots splashing softly in the shallow puddles of the street. No blood, no sound, just progress. This is Leonardo Notarbartolo's preferred punctuation mark. Silent, deliberate. Action, at the same moment, in an office overlooking the Diamond District, a security consultant is finalizing his report. His name is Jean-Claude, but the dealers call him Le Prudent, the careful one. He is methodical, paranoid, and annoyingly good at his job. He believes in redundant systems, layered security, and the fundamental untrustworthiness of human beings. Notarbartolo knows all about him. He has studied Le Prudent for 2 years. He knows he takes his coffee with 1 sugar, that he has a tell when he's bluffing at cards, and that he performs random, unscheduled security checks on holiday weekends. So when Notarbartolo learns, through a whisper from the mender, that Le Prudent has planned a surprise system audit for the weekend of the heist, he doesn't panic. He sends a gift, a rare first edition book on Belgian lace making, delivered to Le Prudent's wife with a simple card. for your collection. Enjoy your weekend in Bruges. Signed, an admirer. La Prudent's wife, an avid collector who has been begging her husband for a trip to Bruges for months, is delighted. La Prudent, who knows no one sends him gifts, is immediately suspicious. He cancels the audit. He spends the entire weekend at home, paranoid, watching the street, convinced a rival is trying to lure him away. He never once thinks to check the vault. Message received. Meanwhile, Notarbartolo returns to his ritual. The small cafe, the dark coffee, the unlit cigarettes. Tonight, he's not alone. The mender joins him, bringing 2 glasses of tea. He doesn't ask what Leonardo is planning for the final days. He doesn't need to. He just sits beside him. You're thinking again, the mender says. Notarbartolo considers. No, he says. Just listening, and that somehow sounds more honest than anything else he said all day. Down below, the city continues to breathe, and Notarbartolo, he listens to the streets, to the silence, to the tiny noises that tell him when something's off, because this city doesn't yell, it whispers. And tonight, he hears something new. The faint rhythmic click, click, click of a lock tumbler miles away in a workshop in Turin. It's subtle. The king of keys is finished. He slips the phone into his pocket and walks down the street. Slower now, measured by the time he reaches the corner. Speedy is already waiting in a borrowed van. Car ready, he says. Is the team ready? Notarbart doesn't answer immediately. He glances at the cathedral spire, a black needle against the bruised evening sky. Then he looks at Speedy, whose hands are already shaking. Maybe, he says, we go to the church. Speedy swallows. He knows what that means. That's where the old Italian families still go to pray. The ones who speak in whispers and move like dust. And tonight, Notarbartolo was going to ask for a blessing he never thought he'd need. Because when you're about to drill a hole into the heart of the diamond world, you need more than a plan. You need faith. The Church of St. Carolus Borromeus isn't on the main tourist trail. It's the kind of place that hides in plain sight, its baroque facade stained with time and soot. At night, it smells of cold incense and damp stone. Notarbartolo moves through the nave, as if stepping back in time. He stops before a small side chapel, dedicated to a forgotten saint of lost causes. A tiny carving near the altar, a barely visible crest of a Turin family, the kind of mark only the old blood would recognize. He kneels, waits, then taps the stone floor twice. A section of the flagstones shifts without a sound. No creak, no greeting, just an old priest who motions with his head. Notarbartolo steps down into the crypt. The corridor is lined with crumbling mosaics. At the end of the crypt, a single wooden chair sits beneath a faded fresco. Sit, the old priest says, his voice like dry leaves rustling. Notarbartolo obeys. It's been years since he's asked for a blessing from Don Lorenzo. Not out of disrespect, but because people like Don Lorenzo aren't part of the new world, their legacy. Like old maps in a drawer no one opens. Quiet, dependable, and only used when you're truly lost. You look like a man about to commit a sin or a miracle, Don Lorenzo says, not unkindly. I'm not sure which yet. Good, the old priest replies, because God has no patience left for certainty. Notarbartolo takes a breath. The vault is ready. The team is in place. But the human element, Don Lorenzo raises an eyebrow. Speedy, he is loyal, but his fear is loud. The old man stands, walks to an alcove behind the chair. and pulls out a folded piece of sheet music. He holds it like it's been dipped in holy water. You ever hear of the Antwerp Symphony's holiday concert? Notarbartolo shakes his head. Exactly, Don Lorenzo mutters. Because no one in the district cares about classical music. He hands the paper over. On it, a schedule for the weekend. The concert ends at 11 p.m. The streets will be flooded with people, cars, police directing traffic. A perfect moment of distraction, the priest says. Give your driver a simple task during that window, a delivery, something to focus his mind away from the main event. A small mission for a nervous soldier. A memory prickles at the edge of Notarbartolo's mind. A small mission. He needs to feel useful. Leonardo Don Lorenzo corrects. And if a man feels useful, he forgets to be afraid. Notarbartolo folds the paper. Don Lorenzo leans in. Tell me, Leonardo, do you feel the ground shifting? Notarbartolo nods once. Don Lorenzo sighs. Then be careful where you plant your next step. This city doesn't forgive hesitation. Back outside, the sky begins to soften. That fine Belgian mist that doesn't fall but lingers, clinging to hair and collarbones. Notarbartolo doesn't hurry. He walks with the kind of pace that says, I'm not lost, but I'm not arriving either. By the time he reaches the van, Speedy is still inside. The priest say anything useful? He asks. He gave me a job for you, a very important one. Me, yes. Notarbartolo says. You. He drives in silence for a while, passing crumbling walls sprayed with graffiti that probably meant something once. One reads, Alien. Stilt is Tava Troen. Trust only silence. Later that night, Notarbartolo returns to his office, peels off his jacket and stands at the window. He stares at his reflection longer than usual. He doesn't see himself. He sees his father, a simple man, a builder who once told him, any fool can build a wall. The art is in knowing where to put the door. Was Notarbartolo trying to find the door his father told him about, or just trying to prove that no door could hold him? He flips the desk lamp on. The room feels better in shadow. Elsewhere, in the warehouse 2 districts away, 4 men huddle over a blueprint of the vault's alarm system. Ilio, the genius, points to a wire schematic. One wears goggles, one wears earplugs. The third, Ferdinando, takes notes in a book designed to be burned in their hands. The final piece of equipment, a custom-built aluminum shield designed to trick a motion detector. They won't bypass the alarm. They'll make it invisible. Notarbartolo knows. One of them whispers. He's not chasing. He's waiting. A pause. And that's worse. The next morning, Notarbartolo doesn't go to the cafe. He goes to a small bakery on the outer corn marked. Real butter, old brick walls. A pastry chef who doesn't know what a smartphone is. The baker knows Notarbartolo by sight, but not by name. Het Gebrikalige, he asks. The usual. Notarbartolo nods. He takes his coffee outside and sits at a tiny table beneath an awning that's lost most of its stripes. Across the street, a man pretends to read a newspaper for 20 minutes. Notarbartolo lets him, then stands, walks across calmly, and drops a sugar packet by the man's shoe. Next time you follow me, he says softly, try a different hat. The man doesn't look up, but later that day, he's pulled from surveillance duty. Quietly, no reprimand, no promotion, just gone. Like a file removed from a cabinet. That night, Notarbartolo returns to the bookbinder's shop. This time, it is he who has asked for the meeting. Same room, same damp air, but this time the mender waits for him. He lets him arrive first. Then, with a slow breath, Notarbartolo places a folded map of the diamond district on the crate. Every street marked, some circled, some underlined, and at the center, the diamond center. Things are moving, he says. No, the mender corrects. Things are about to break. Notarbartolo folds the map again, then says, maybe it's time they did. Because fixing a broken system doesn't mean rebuilding it the same way. Sometimes, it means drawing a new map and watching who follows it first. The Diamond District on a Friday evening is a study in contained energy. The day's trading is done, the briefcases are locked, and the dealers have scattered to their homes for Shabbat, leaving the streets to the quiet hum of security systems and the slow sweep of street cleaners. It's a city holding its breath. For the weekend for Leonardo Notarbartolo, it is the final, quiet moment before the performance. He walks through the district one last time, not as a thief, but as his cover, an ordinary Italian merchant on his way home. He nods to the security guard at the main entrance of the Diamond Centre, a man named Luke, whose daughter's school recital Notarbartolo had politely asked about just last week. Have a good weekend, Mr. Notarbartolo, Luke says. You too, Luke, Leonardo replies, his voice warm, even. He doesn't hurry. He walks to his rented office, collects a briefcase empty and leaves. The perfect picture of routine. Hours later, long after midnight, the city has finally surrendered to a deep Saturday stillness. The tennis tournament is in full swing across town, its floodlights creating a false dawn in the western sky. The symphony is letting out, its patrons flooding the streets with noise and traffic. It is the perfect moment of misdirection, just as Don Lorenzo had predicted. Speedy sits behind the wheel of a dark, nondescript van parked 2 blocks from the Diamond Centre. His hands are slick with sweat. In his pocket is the address of a flower shop where he is to make a late-night delivery. A simple task, but his heart hammers against his ribs. He is the lookout, the getaway driver, the first and last line of escape. Notarbartolo, sitting in the passenger seat, places a calm hand on his shoulder. Just the delivery, my friend, nothing more. Go. We will wait. Speedy nods, takes a shaky breath, and drives off into the orchestrated chaos. His small mission has begun. Notarbartolo is now alone. He gets out of the car and melts into the shadows of an adjacent alley. He is the conductor, and his orchestra is about to begin. The other 3, Elio, the genius, Ferdinando, the monster, and the king of Pisa, already in position. They do not approach the Diamond Centre from the front. They use a keynote Bartolo had procured months ago for an abandoned office building that shares a small walled garden with the centre. It is a blind spot, a forgotten corner of the security grid. From the garden, they use a ladder to reach a second-floor balcony. Notarbartolo has studied the building's infrared sensors for over a year. He knows this particular window sensor is old, its sensitivity tuned down to prevent false alarms from roosting pigeons. Ilio carefully places a piece of specially coated transparent film over it. The sensor is now blind. Once inside, they move with the quiet confidence of men who have walked these halls 100 times in their minds. Down the stairs, through a deserted corridor, to a maintenance door in the basement. This is the first real lock. The king of keys steps forward. He doesn't use a pick. He uses a custom-made tension wrench and a small, vibrating tool of his own design. It doesn't pick the lock. It convinces it to open. A soft click And they are through now. They stand in the antechamber of the vault. The air here is colder still. Before them is the vault door. 3 tons of Italian steel, a foot thick. It is a legend in the world of security. Elio gets to work. He is a surgeon operating on the building's nervous system. He kneels, opens a small panel beside the door. Wires, so many wires. He consults. A diagram he has memorized, a map of the vault's electronic soul. He doesn't cut, he redirects. He uses small alligator clips and bypass wires to create a loop. The system now reports that everything is normal, even though he is taking it apart. Next, the sensors on the vault itself. The motion detector is first. Ferdinando holds up the large, lightweight aluminum shield they built in the warehouse. It's angled perfectly to reflect the sensor's beam back onto itself. The detector is now staring at its own reflection, content that nothing is moving. The heat sensor is next. Notarbartolo, during a visit weeks ago, had sprayed a thin, invisible layer of clear lacquer on it, slightly dulling its sensitivity. Now, Elio uses a can of compressed air, chilled to just above freezing, to create a cold spot in the room, drawing the sensor's attention away from their body heat. The final electronic trap is the most formidable, a magnetic plate on the door. If the 2 sides of the plate are separated by more than a millimeter, an alarm connected to a dedicated phone line will silently alert the police. It is designed to be unbeatable, but Elio has a plan. He carefully pries the plate housing from the door frame, exposing the 2 magnetic contacts. He doesn't disconnect them. He takes a thick piece of industrial tape and sticks them together, ensuring the circuit remains closed. He then unscrews the entire plate mechanism from the door, a dead weight now held together by tape. The system still thinks the door is sealed. Tight now, the physical locks. Notarbartolo had filmed the guard entering the combination dozens of times with his pen camera. From those fuzzy recordings, they had decoded the number. It was a long shot, but it was their only one. Ferdinando steps up to the large combination wheel. He turns it with a slow, deliberate touch. The clicks are barely audible, like whispers in the deep quiet. Left, right, left again. The tumblers fall into place with a sound so soft it is almost imagined. The final piece. The king of keys steps forward. He holds 3 keys, each one an almost identical replica of the vault's long, serpent-like key. He had made them from Notarbarto's photographs. He tries the first one. It slides in, but won't turn. He tries the second. It resists. His hands are steady. He takes a breath and inserts the 3rd key. It slides home with a soft, metallic sigh. A perfect fit. He turns, and with a low groan of protesting steel, the 3-turn door begins to open. They are inside. But the job is not over. A heavy steel grate, with its own lock, bars their way. This is Ferdinando's moment, the monster. He unpacks a custom-made hydraulic jack. It's small, but immensely powerful. He places it against the lock mechanism of the grate and begins to pump. The only sound is a faint whir and a slow, torturous creak as the steel begins to bend. The lock breaks with a sharp crack that echoes in the small space. The grate swings open. Before them lie 160 safe deposit boxes, a wall of sealed promises. They work without speaking, a silent, efficient team. They have another custom tool, a slim, powerful device that Ferdinando invented. They slide it into the keyhole of each box and, with a quick, Hard twist, it snaps. The lock from the inside. They don't open every box. Only the ones the mender has marked on a list. 123 of them. For hours, they work. They fill duffel bags with diamonds, with gold, with jewels, with stacks of currency from a dozen different countries. They also find something else. Stacks of bearer bonds, unregistered financial instruments. The mender had told them these were the real prize. These were the system's secrets. They also visit the security room just down the hall. They take the videotapes from the recorders, a week's worth of footage. They are erasing themselves from time by 4 a.m. As the first hints of Sunday's light begin to touch the sky over Antwerp, their work is done. They have been inside the world's most secure vault for over 4 hours, and no alarm has sounded. No guard has noticed. They swing the great steel door shut. They do not lock it. They leave it resting in place. They retrace their steps, leaving the building as quietly as they entered. They climb back over the balcony, into the garden, and out into the alley. Speedy is waiting, his small delivery task completed hours ago. His nerves are shot, but he's there. The bags are loaded. They get in the van and drive away into the disappearing night, melting into the light traffic of a city just beginning to stir. They have become ghosts, leaving behind a tomb that only looks empty. The drive away from Antwerp was smooth, silent. The 5 men sat in the van, surrounded by bags, holding a fortune they couldn't yet comprehend. The sky was turning from bruised purple to a soft, watery grey. The adrenaline of the heist was fading, replaced by a deep, bone-weary satisfaction. They had done it. They had performed a perfect symphony of theft. Notarbartolo felt a quiet pride. His plan, his rhythm, had held. The plan for the aftermath was as simple as it was crucial. Drive south, cross the border into France, then into Italy. They would meet the mender in a safe house near Turin. The diamonds and bonds would be handed over. They would receive their payment, and then they would disappear, each to a different corner of Europe, until the heat died down. The first part of the journey went flawlessly. They moved through the Belgian countryside, then crossed into France without incident. They stopped once for fuel and coffee at a desolate roadside station. They didn't speak to each other, each man lost in his own thoughts. The King of Keys looked out the window, his work done, already a ghost again. Elio, the genius, was mentally retracing every wire he'd bypassed. Ferdinando, the monster, was simply profoundly tired. But there was a problem, and its name was Speedy. The nervous energy that had plagued him for months had now, with the release of tension, curdled into pure, uncut paranoia. Every car that passed them on the highway was an unmarked police vehicle. Every glance from another driver was the look of suspicion. He fidgeted, he sweated, he muttered to himself. And then there were the 2 bags of evidence. One held the tools, the custom wrenches, the hydraulic jack, the aluminum shield, the leftover tape and wires. The other held their personal trash, empty water bottles, sandwich wrappers, cigarette butts. The plan was to find a secluded spot, a deserted field, and burn everything. A clean fire, leaving nothing behind. As they drove deeper into the French countryside, Speedy's anxiety reached a breaking point. "We have to get rid of it now," he hissed, his eyes wide. "Someone's following us. I know it." Note tried to calm him. "No one is following us, my friend. We are ghosts. We just need to be patient. Find the right spot." But Speedy was beyond reason. He began to have a panic attack, his breathing shallow, his hands shaking so violently he could barely hold the steering wheel. I can't do it, Leo. Let's just dump it. Here, in the woods. No one will ever find it. It was a catastrophic suggestion, a messy, careless act, completely antithetical to the precision of the entire operation. The other men in the van protested. This was not the plan, but Speedy was becoming a liability. His panic was infectious, a virus in the sterile environment. Of their success, against his better judgment, against every instinct he possessed, Notarbartolo made a fatal concession. He was the leader. He needed to control the situation. Maybe a small deviation was better than his driver crashing the van. Fine, he said, his voice tight. Pull over. They found a dense patch of woods off a quiet country road. It was a hasty, clumsy act. They dragged the bags from the van and hurled them into the thick undergrowth. They didn't check to see how well they were hidden. They just wanted the source of Speedy's panic gone. They threw away their perfect crime, along with the garbage. It was a moment of weakness that would unravel everything. They got back in the van and drove on, the silence now heavy with unspoken regret. A few days later, a man named August van Camp, a retired Belgian forest ranger, was walking his dog on his property, which bordered those same woods. He was a man who valued order and tidiness. He noticed the disturbed earth and the black plastic of the bags. Annoyed at what he assumed was illegal dumping, he went to investigate. He hoped to find a name, an address, anything to identify the litterbugs so he could report them. He tore open the first bag. He found sandwich wrappers, empty drink cans, and then a receipt from a hardware store in Antwerp. Strange, he opened the second bag. His eyes widened. He saw weirdly shaped metal tools, coils of wire, and rolls of industrial tape. And mixed in with the dirt and leaves, he saw them. Small, sparkling stones that caught the weak sunlight. Diamonds and envelopes. Dozens of them bearing the crest of the Antwerp World Diamond Centre. Van Camp, a man who had lived his whole life near Antwerp, knew exactly what he was looking at. He walked calmly back to his house and called the police. Meanwhile, back in Antwerp on Monday morning, the vault was opened. The scene was one of quiet, impossible violation. The door was unlocked. The grate was mangled. 123 safe deposit boxes were gaping open. The news ripped through the diamond district like a shockwave. The heist of the century. The police were dumbfounded. There was no sign of forced entry. The alarms had never sounded. The videotapes were gone. It was a ghost crime. The Belgian police began their investigation, but they had nothing. They started interviewing everyone with access to the building. The name Leonardo Notarbartolo came up. An Italian merchant, a tenant for a few years, a charming man. A routine background check revealed his past, his connections to the infamous School of Turin. He became a person of interest. Then the call came from the French police. The strange discovery in the woods. When the Belgian investigators arrived, it was like opening a treasure chest. They found the tools, which matched the marks on the broken locks. They found the discarded plans, and they found the jackpot. On a half-eaten salami sandwich, they found a sample of saliva, DNA. They rushed it to the lab. The net was closing, and Notarbartolo had no idea. He was back in Italy, having delivered the loot to the mender. He felt secure, anonymous, but he made one last, crucial mistake, born not of panic, but of ego. He wanted to prove his own genius. He reasoned that the only person who wouldn't dare return to Antwerp after such a heist was the thief himself. To appear innocent, he had to do the opposite. A week after the robbery, he drove back to Antwerp. He walked up to the Diamond Centre, his head held high, and used his ID card to enter the building, as if it were just another day at the office. But the security team and police were waiting. The DNA results had come back. They matched a sample. In the Italian police database, Leonardo Notarbartolo. The moment he swiped his card, alarms that had been silent the week before blared through the security office. The police, who were already in the building interviewing other tenants, descended on him. They arrested Leonardo Notarbartolo, the artist, the gentleman thief, at the very scene of his masterpiece. He was caught by a sandwich and his own pride. The trial of Leonardo Notarbartolo was almost as much of a performance as the heist itself. Held in a hushed Antwerp courtroom, it captured the world's attention. Here was the man who had defeated the undefeatable Vault. But the story he told was not the one the prosecutors expected. Notarbartolo, ever the calm, charming gentleman, did not deny his involvement. Instead, he reframed the entire narrative. He claimed he was not the mastermind, but a contractor. He told the court he had been hired by a consortium of Jewish diamond merchants, led by a man he knew only by a pseudonym. The heist, he alleged, was a massive insurance fraud, according to his testimony. Many of the safe deposit boxes were already empty before his team even entered the vault. The dealers, he claimed, had been tipped off. They had removed their own valuable stones, planning to declare them stolen and collect enormous insurance payouts, while secretly keeping the gems. The real theft wasn't from the vault, but from the insurance companies. He insisted that his team had only stolen goods worth around $20 million, a fraction of the $100 million plus figure being reported by the victims. "We were hired to make a robbery look real," he said, his voice even and reasonable, "and we did our job perfectly, perhaps too perfectly." He painted himself as a pawn in a much larger, more cynical game, a professional who did his job, and was then set up to take the fall when the evidence was discovered. The prosecutors and the world's media were spellbound but deeply skeptical. They portrayed his story as a brilliant, desperate fiction, an attempt to mitigate his guilt, and sow confusion. They had hard evidence. They had his DNA on the sandwich. They had the tools from the woods. They had the testimony of the landlord who found the trash. They had the meticulously documented years of planning, his renting the office, his patient. Surveillance, the mysterious diamond merchant, was never found. No evidence of a larger conspiracy ever surfaced. To the court, it was clear. Notarbartolo was the ringleader. He was found guilty and sentenced to 10 years in prison. The other members of his team were eventually tracked down. The DNA evidence, combined with phone records and Notarbartolo's own seized address book, led the police to them. Elio Donorio, the genius, and Ferdinando Finotto, the monster, each received 5-year sentences. Speedy, whose panic had doomed them all, also received a 5-year sentence, but one member of the crew remained a ghost. The King of Keys was never identified, never caught. He dissolved back into the shadows from which he came, his true name, and face forever a mystery. The aftermath of the heist left a trail of unanswered questions that linger to this day. The most significant question of all was about the treasure. Where were the diamonds? Despite the arrests and convictions, almost nothing was ever recovered. A few small stones found in the woods, A handful found hidden in Notarbartolo's apartment, but the vast bulk of the loot, the tens of millions in diamonds, gold, cash, and bearer bonds, vanished without a trace. It's believed they were smuggled out of Italy within days of the heist, sent on a journey through the world's black markets, recut, given new identities, and sold back into the legitimate trade. They became untraceable. They are hiding in plain sight, on engagement rings, in necklaces, in private collections. Their violent and secret origins completely unknown to their new owners. The Antwerp World Diamond Centre, its reputation as a fortress shattered, was forced to undertake a complete and costly overhaul of its security. The trust that had been the bedrock of the district for 500 years was shaken. The handshake deals felt less secure. The small dealers who had lost everything, for whom this was not a glamorous story but a devastating personal tragedy, were ruined. Notarbartolo was released from prison on parole in 2009 after serving 6 years of his 10-year sentence. He returned to Italy, a celebrity in the criminal underworld. He wrote a book, gave interviews, and always stuck to his story of the grand insurance fraud. He never wavered. He was rearrested in 2013 for violating his parole by failing to pay compensation to his victims, and served the remainder of his term. He was fully released in 2017 today. He lives a quiet life near his hometown of Turin. He is a man caught between two realities. In the eyes of the law, he is the convicted mastermind of one of the greatest robberies in history. In his own telling, he is a scapegoat, the star performer in a play whose producers have long since disappeared with the box office receipts. The truth, like the diamonds, remains elusive, buried somewhere between a perfect plan and a perfect lie. And so, our story comes to a gentle, quiet close. The great Antwerp diamond heist has passed into legend, a tale of breathtaking ingenuity, and a single, fatal mistake. It is a story not of violence, but of patience. A story about a man who looked at an impenetrable wall and saw a keyhole. Think, for a moment, of those missing diamonds, scattered across the globe like seeds on the wind. Perhaps one is catching the light on a hand in a cafe in Paris. Perhaps another lies in a velvet box in a Tokyo penthouse, its owner unaware of the night it was liberated from its steel prison. The mystery of what truly happened, of who told the real story, is what gives the tale its enduring power. It is a puzzle, with missing pieces, and perhaps that's how it's meant to be. But for now, it is time to let those questions fade. Let the story of Leonardo Notarbartolo and his School of Turin become a distant, glittering echo. The planning is done. The vault is open. The escape has been made, and the consequences have been paid. All that is left is the deep, peaceful quiet of the night. Let your mind drift away from the details. There are no more locks to be picked, no more alarms to be bypassed. There is only the feeling of calm, the gentle gravity of sleep. Allow yourself to let go of the day's own puzzles and plans. Feel the weight of your body sinking into your bed, comfortable and secure. Your breathing is slow and steady. You are safe. The vault of your mind is sealed for the night. Let the silence be your guard. Let the darkness be your blanket. It is time to rest. Good night.